Hello everybody, welcome back. Today I'm going to discuss about implicit objects. There are totally 9 JSP implicit objects. These objects are created by the web container that are available to all the JSP pages. And the available implicit objects are out object, request object, config, session, application, exception, etc. And first is the JSP out implicit object. For writing any data to the buffer, JSP provides an implicit object named out. It is the object.jsp writer, whereas in case of servlet, you need to write it as print writer out equal to response.getWriter. Next is the request. JSP request is an implicit object of type HTTP subnet request that is created for each JSP request by the web container. It can be used to get request information such as parameter, header information, remote address, server name, server port, content type, character encoding, etc. It can also be used to set, get, and remove attributes from the JSP request code. Next is the response. In JSP, response is an implicit object of type HTTP servlet response, and the instance of HTTP servlet response is created by the web container for each JSP request. It can be used to add or manipulate the response, such as redirect response to another resource, send error, etc. Next is the config object. In JSP, config is an implicit object of type servlet config, and this object can be used to get initialization parameter for a particular JSP page. The config object is created by the web container for each JSP page. Generally, it is used to get initialization parameter from the web.xml file. Next is the application. JSP application is an implicit object of type servlet context. The instance of servlet context is created only once by the web container when application or project is deployed on the server. And this object is also can be used to get the initialization parameter from configuration file, that is web.xml. It can also be used to get, set, or remove the attribute from the application scope, and this initialization parameter can be used by all the JSP pages. Next is the session object. In JSP, session is an implicit object of type HTTP session, and the Java developer can use this object to set, get, or remove the attributes or to get the session information. Next is the page context object. In JSP, page context is an implicit object of type page context class. The page context object can be used to set, get, or remove the attribute from one of the following scopes. Now, what are these scopes? Page scope, request scope, session scope, application scope. In JSP, page scope is the default scope. And next is the page object. In JSP, page object is an implicit object of type object class. This object is assigned to the reference of auto-generated servlet class. It is written as object page is equal to this. For using this object, it must be cast to servlet type. For example, HTTP servlet of page.logof message. Since it is of type object, it is less used because you can use this object directly in JSP. For example, this.logof message. Next is the exception object. In JSP, exception is an implicit object of type java.line.global class, and this object can be used to print the exception, but it can only be used in error pages. And it is better to learn it after the page directory. It is percentile at the rate page is error page equal to true. And inside the body, you need to write it as sorry following exception occurred equal to exception. So I'll show you these with some examples. So first is the out object. First create a dynamic web project of out, naming as out. Inside the source, create one com.out package and right click on the package and create one index.jsp. And there is also a web.xml inside a web.env folder. And this web.xml contains the default files inside welcome file list. And this index.jsp contains out.print. This is an out object. So out.print today is java.util.calendar.getinstance.gettime. You will get the data in time for this. Right click on the application, just say run as, and run on the server. Select the server, click on the appropriate project and say finish. Then you'll get today is Sunday, April 11th in the time, date and time. So this is about out implicit object. And next is the config. Sorry, application object also we are having. Create one dynamic web project application. Inside source, create one dev package and right click on the package and create one index.html file and one welcome.jsp file. And inside web.inf you have web.xml. And web.xml consists of servlet name, default files and also servlet name as Scott, JSP file as welcome.jsp. And the URL pattern is welcome. And the initialization parameters given here is for application means it is a servlet context. It is applied to all the JSP pages. So what are the context parameters we are passing here? Param name is the driver name and param value is MySQL driver, that is com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. So first control goes from web.xml to index.html. Here input type equal to text, name equal to username. When you submit, say submit, form action goes to welcome URL of the welcome.jsp. Then here out.print welcome, it will access the username from index.html using request.get parameter. It says welcome and string driver equal to application.get init parameter. It gets the parameter from web.xml. It gets the driver name from web.xml and it brings the driver name. So just right click on the file, index.html file and run the application. Run on the server, say next. Just click the project application and say finish. Enter the name here as Scott. And when you say click the go button, it says welcome Scott and driver name is com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. So this is about application implicit object. Next is the config. So config, create a dynamic web project config and create one package. Right click on the source, create one package com.config and right click on the package and create two files, that is index.html and welcome.jsp. And you are also having one web.xml file. Here also servlet name is Scott and JSP file is welcome.jsp. Here we are passing the init parameters inside the servlet. Why? Because config applies to only one JSP page. So init, these are local to the JSP, so they are passed inside the servlet tag. Init param name is driver name, param value is com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. And the URL pattern is welcome. So first control goes from web.xml to index.html. First input type equal to text, name, username. Once you enter the username and say submit, the form goes to URL welcome of welcome.jsp. Then it gets the username from index.html using request.get parameter and prints that welcome username. Then string driver equal to config.get init parameter. It gets the initialization parameters from web.xml, gets the driver name and stores in the driver. Then out.print driver name. So now right click on this application, index.html, run on the server. Then just say next, select the server and select the appropriate project name as config and say finish. So just enter the Scott here, name and say enter. So welcome Scott and driver name is com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. So this is about config. Config is applicable to only a single JSP page. And next is the exception, implicit object. Create one dynamic web project exception. Inside the right click on the source, create one package, and right click on the package and create three files here: error.jsp, index.html, and then process.jsp. Then one web.xml file is present in web.inf. So what happens here inside the web.xml, you have your default files in welcome file list. Then from here, the control goes to index.html. Here, form action is process.jsp, input type equal to text, name equal to n1, and input type equal to text, name equal to n2. You enter the two numbers and say submit. And then form action goes to process.jsp. And once you say submit, then this file will get the numbers from the index.html using request.get parameter, stores in number 1 and number 2, and this num1 and num2 are converted to integers as they are in the form of strings. Then int c equal to a by b, that is we are performing the division of these two numbers. Then out.print division of numbers is c. If you divide a number by 0, then the error page equal to error.jsp. It will throw an exception and it will go to error.jsp. Inside error.jsp, we have sorry an exception occurred, and an exception is percentile equal to exception. So this is about exception implicit object. Next is the page context. Create one dynamic web project, page context. Inside source, create one package, and right click on the package and create three files, that is index.html, second.jsp, and welcome.jsp. Then inside the webin folder you have one web.xml. Web.xml contains default files inside the welcome file list. First the control comes from web.xml to index.html. Here form action equal to welcome.jsp, input type equal to text, name equal to your name. Once you enter the username and say submit, form action goes to welcome.jsp. Inside welcome.jsp, this gets the username from the index.html using request.get parameter and stores in the string name. Then out.print welcome name. Then page context dot set attribute of user comma name. This is used to set the attribute for user comma name, and page context dot session score. Then it goes to when you play when you then this link when you click on this link second JSP page, then it goes to second.jsp. Inside second.jsp, string name equal to string of page context dot get attribute user comma. So this is in the welcome file, it is setting the attribute using page context dot session scope, and here in the second.jsp it is getting the attribute. Then hello in the hello name. So go to index.html, right click on the project, say run as, run on the server, select the Tomcat server, select the appropriate project, page context, then say finish. Then enter the name here, Scott, then welcome Scott. If you click this link, second JSP page, then you get hello Scott. So this is the page context implicit object. And next is the request. Create one dynamic web project request, and inside source create one package com.request, right click on the package, and here create two files, index.html and the welcome.jsp, and inside webin folder you have a web.xml. So first web.xml contains the default files inside welcome folders. Then the control enters from web.xml to index.html. Here form action equal to welcome.jsp. Once input type equal to text, name equal to username. You enter the username and say submit. Then the form action goes to welcome.jsp. Inside welcome.jsp, this gets the username using from index.html using request.getParameter and stores in the string name. Then out.print welcome name. This is the request implicit object. So right click on the index.html and run on the server. Select the Tomcat server and select the appropriate project request and say finish. Then once you enter the username as Scott, you get welcome Scott. This is the request implicit object. Next is the response implicit object. First create one dynamic web project response. Create one package com.response. Right click on the package and create one index.html file and one welcome.jsp file. Inside webin folder, you have one web.xml file. This web.xml file contains default files and welcome files. So control enters from web.xml to index.html. Here form action equal to welcome.jsp, input type equal to text, name equal to username. Once you enter the username and say submit, then form action goes to welcome.jsp. Inside welcome.jsp, the response goes to response.send redirect to. Here this is a response implicit object. That's why we are using response object here. So response.send redirect to google.com. So right click on the application index.html and say run as and run on the server. Select the Tomcat server and select the project response and say finish. So once you enter the username as Scott and say enter, then the response redirects to Google website. So this is about the response implicit object. So hope you understood about these implicit objects. So I'll continue in the next class.